Welcome back to Dukascopy TV. I'm Elaine Stenson. I'm joined in the studio now by Dr. Frank Hollenbeck from the International University of Geneva. He's here with me now to discuss current events in Europe. Dr. Frank, you're very welcome back to the studio.
Good to be here.
So what was your take on the Swiss referendum that saw a limit on the amount of immigrants coming into Switzerland?
Well, the Swiss People's Party is playing on what I call a popular misconception. Okay, the first one is that immigrants are responsible for lowering average wages, and immigrants are taking the job of Swiss citizens. Okay, if the popular misconception is that there's a fixed amount of jobs, and there isn't. Okay, if that was the case, then the countries with the highest populations would have the highest unemployment rates. Okay, and let me give you a very simple example. Suppose that we have 100 people and we have them making 100 things. Okay, if we bring in 100 people, does that mean that we have unemployment of 100? Answer is no. The reason is these individuals not only are producing, but they're also consuming. Okay, and what will happen is that we'll have 200 people making more than 200 things. The reason is because we get the gains of the division of labor. Okay, we have to realize that growth comes from an increase in the capital base and the gains from the division of labor. So in other words, what we have is that immigrants are actually increasing the standard of living of the average Swiss citizens, not reducing their standard of living. Now, the second thing that the Swiss People Party said is that immigrants are responsible for the fact that housing is unaffordable, and they also have talked about traffic bottlenecks. Okay, the reason housing is unaffordable is because the Swiss central bank has lost control of its money supply to fix an exchange rate of 1.2. In other words, M1 has grown almost 100% since 2007. Okay, which has led to a housing bubble and therefore higher rents. Okay, and talking about traffic congestion, we have to remember that immigrants also pay taxes. Okay, and who is ultimately responsible for traffic? Okay, it's the governments. Okay, so immigrants are not necessarily responsible for either of those two things. But the interesting thing about this referendum is actually it's showing that we have a problem in Europe. Okay, it's kind of like the tip of the iceberg. We have to realize that Switzerland is pretty well off. It's got 4.4% unemployment. Okay, but what must be the feeling, for example, in countries such as Greece, Spain, or Italy, where unemployment rate, the youth unemployment rate is near 60%. So we're likely to see a lot of anti-immigration parties, like the National Front in France, gain in the upcoming European elections.
The German Constitutional Court recently rendered a decision stating that the ECB's OMT programme violated the German constitution. The case has since been passed to the European Court of Justice. But Frank, what are the implications for European monetary policy in the future?
Well, it's interesting because if the European Court of Justice sides with the European Central Bank, then we're likely to have a clash in the future, because the German government simply will not be able to tolerate a policy that goes against the German constitution. So it really looks like we're going to have something that I talked about previously in previous interviews, is that one day we're going to have a clash between Germany and its view of monetary policy and other countries such as Spain, Italy, and France and their view of what monetary policy should be. So we could very well see a breakup of the euro where we have a northern and a southern euro in the future.
And Frank, Italy is back in the headlines after their Prime Minister Enrico Letta resigned last week. But what impact will this have for the rest of Europe?
Well, I think the new government is finally considering implementing the right type of strategy, which is to cut government spending and to cut taxes, as the U.S. did in 1920 and as Latvia did in 2009 and 2010. Okay. However, I'm afraid it may be too little, too late. Okay. GDP growth has dropped 8% since 2007. Industrial production between 2007 and 2012 dropped 25%, another 3% this year. And as we can see from this graph, Italy Italy is still not one of the best places to do business, okay? And the banking sector in Italy is in a catastrophic situation. Its non-performing loans has gone from 4.5% in 2007 to 13% at the end of 2013. And even then, we're not counting a lot of loans that are very questionable. So I would say the banking sector is basically, you know, now in a catastrophic situation with non-performing loans closer to 30%. So I don't see the banking sector in Italy providing the type of liquidity and credit growth to ensure that small and medium-sized enterprises bring Italy out of its slump. Okay, and let's not forget, Italy has not really grown very much since 1980, and to solve its debt problem, it's going to have to grow, and that's unlikely to occur.
Okay, Dr. Frank, as always, thank you for joining us in the studio today. And that's all we have time for now, but do check back later for further updates and interviews from the TV team. Bye for now.